This is the story of a little project in the middle of nowhere that's daring to dream big. In 2008, we set up a little microfinance business in Mukono, Uganda, with Douglas Haynes. The project was aimed at helping a few Africans work their way out of poverty. We hired a local called Richard, here he is, to manage the project, got a few friends to help out financially, and job done. Or so we thought. Turns out Richard had a bigger vision than all of us. So here we are, 10 years down the track, sitting on a thriving business that's become a go-to organisation for government funding and has changed the lives of hundreds of people in the Mukono region. All of which leaves us with a problem. We could put the lid on it and settle for what we've got, but that seems like something of a cop-out when we've got a man on the ground who's on fire and thousands of families needing our help. You can see where I'm going with this, can't you? What we need to do is raise $20,000 US to buy some land, build a piggery, pigs are gold in Africa, and both increase our capital base and become self-sustaining. This presentation is designed to convince you to help us to do that. Okay, so where exactly is Mukono? Well, it's about 45 minutes or 6 hours west of Kampala, depending on traffic. So here we have Kampala. You'll remember Entebbe and the siege, if you're old enough, for Entebbe. That's the airport. Then we have Kampala, and we work our way out to the west here. Seta is the nearest village, and then into Mukono, and you follow this road and it takes you out to Jinja. And south here we have Miami Beach, the other Miami Beach. I thought Bob Geldof had Africa under control. Well, he's certainly done his fair share and he deserves every accolade he turns down. But unlike Bob, we're not looking to change the world. We're just looking to change the lives of a few hundred families in a small part of Africa because, well, we can. So let's show you a couple of statistics. On the surface, Uganda has an admirable track record of reducing poverty. In fact, according to the 2016 poverty assessment, the proportion of Ugandan population living below the national poverty line declined from just over 30% in 2006 to just under 20% in 2013. Impressive stuff. What they don't tell you is that for every 3 Ugandans lifted out of poverty, 2 fall back. The reality is that a report from the Ugandan Bureau of Statistics, UBOS, in 2016-17 showed that the number of people living in poverty now stands at 10 million, up from 6.6 million. That's a 30% increase in Uganda. The UBOS executive director blamed the grim figures on poor harvests prompted by drought. When you give money from the top down, there are a number of filters through which it must inevitably pass, which means the people it was intended for may only see a small portion of it while the Mercedes dealership prospers. This is not news. When you give money from the bottom up, on the other hand, the vast majority of it ends up in the hands of the man on the street, or in this case, the men in the ditch. And this is Richard at the opening of our well building project, which was funded by the Japanese Water Forum. So how does it work then? Well, we make loans of around $150 US to small businesses, often at the roadside or in the bush. They use that money to grow their businesses and, at the end of the year, they repay the loans plus 2% interest, which is invested back into the project. The banks will charge around 25% or more, and the loan sharks, well, don't go there. We mainly lend to women and to groups, women because they're more reliable and groups because they work together. When the government comes to the party, things begin to happen, well, in Uganda at least. The biggest endorsement we can think of is that the Ugandan government has chosen Capital for Life as the lead agency in its Youth Protection from Violence project, which is capitalised at 165,000 US over 3 years. That's a lot of money in Uganda. It's a lot of money anywhere. Most of that goes to resourcing the project itself, so Capital for Life won't see any of that direct funding, but the endorsement from the government is possibly worth more, and we are now a preferred partner for many other organisations, some of which are listed further on. What kind of businesses are we talking about? Well, think roadside or bush, and then agriculture and farming, restaurants, well, small cafes really, retail shops and poultry and textiles and boutiques and hairdressing and sugarcane and bricklaying and stone quarrying and tomato growing and selling and wheat, and then we've got art and crafts and electronics and phones, of course, and we've invested in schools and butchers and piggeries, all kinds of stuff, and even flat iron manufacturing. Now look at this work of genius. And yes, they are jump leads on the flat iron, but we've yet to find out whether the car powers the iron or the iron powers the car. So we mentioned schools in that list, and we thought we'd just talk to one of the projects that we've been involved with at schools level. So Capital for Life has been working closely with Justine for the last 10 years. And as a result, she's been able to develop a primary school from scratch, which now has over 115 pupils and 7 teachers. And that's all based on the loans that she has received from Capital for Life. We've got loads of numbers that we can throw at you, but here are some fairly cool ones. So Capital for Life has worked with 156 small businesses and 144 community stakeholder groups. We've loaned 73 million Ugandan shillings, which is around 20,000 US. 95% of our loans are repaid on time, women and groups. 300 members of our communities have received business training. 34 youth groups with 310 members have been created, and 56 scholarships have been awarded to students from marginalised families to the Do It Virtual University. And there's a bunch of other good stuff that we've done over the years. So we've set up youth groups that have collectively accessed 58 million shillings, around that number, in government grants, which are aimed at teaching these kids practical skills. We've partnered with the African Network for the Prevention and Protection Against Child Abuse and Neglect organisation to work on gender-based violence issues. We've counselled youth groups in order to reduce the cases of HIV/AIDS in the area. We have a clinic at which a medical team handles around 250 patients who receive drugs for malaria, and they also receive mosquito nets. We have a project focused on water and waste disposal management. We've conducted extensive computer training, and also we've conducted numerous training courses to upskill our members in business management. There's many more things, but hopefully this gives you a pretty good idea that we do more than just make microloans. So this is Juliet's story, and the only reason I tell you this is to illustrate the calibre of people that we're dealing with on the ground in Africa. So here's Juliet, surrounded by her ladies, and there's myself and Chris just fitting in beautifully in the background. So a number of years ago, I went to meet with Juliet and her ladies in the bush, and we were sat in a mud hut, and Juliet stood up and presented profit and loss, cash flow, balance sheets, scenario forecasts, etc., for her business. And at the end of it, having blown me away, she asked whether or not we were going to loan to her. And again, of course, the answer was yes. And she'd done all of this in beautiful English. So I asked her afterwards where she learned her English and where she learned her business sense. And she said, well, my parents sent me to private school, saved all of their money to send me to private school. And then from there, I went on and I got a scholarship to university. And then I made a schoolboy error of saying, well, why didn't you go on and work in Kampala in the big city or elsewhere in Africa? She could have done with her skills, her English and her degree. And she gave me a withering look that's reserved for idiots, and said, well, the whole point of sending me to university was so that I could come back and work with my people. So that's the kind of attitude that we have in many of the people who head up the groups that we work with, and it's kind of why we do this stuff. In order to be successful, it's really important to develop a good network of relationships with other people working in the same space. So we have very strong relationships with the Office of the Prime Minister of the Republic of Uganda and Technoserve and Mukono District Council and Mukono NGO Forum and the Office of the Commander of Wealth Creation in Mukono, Village Care Initiatives, Community-Based Health, Do It Virtual University, which we've mentioned, and Books Abroad, Japanese Water Forum, which we've also mentioned. So our connections and our network reach far and wide in the Mukono district. And so just to say a big thank you to all of our supporters, both in New Zealand and internationally. Douglas Haynes, of course, who founded the organisation, Stephen and Jackie Walls and Paul Bennett and Peter Tynan, Laura Forbes and Hannah Boyd, Roger Townsend and Corey Howe, Carol Wall, Anarchy Goodall and Andy Young. Big thanks to all of you. So Capital for Life is not a charity. We're all about hand up, not hand out. I think this quote from Richard pretty much summarises his attitude and the view of all of the Capital for Life family. We're proud people, and while we're very grateful, we don't want to spend the rest of our lives asking for handouts from others. We want to build an organisation that generates enough revenue to sustain itself and its family for the foreseeable future. The big, hairy, audacious goal is to support over 500 businesses with a capital base of 250 million Ugandan shillings, which is around 70,000 US by 2023. That's a big target, but that's what big, hairy, audacious goals are. Just wanted to explain our philosophy around infrastructure. When most people donate to good causes, they want all of their money to go to helping a child or building a school or buying a pig. Now, we get the pig thing, but the problem is that without infrastructure, i.e. Richard, and his team, nothing gets done and there are no pigs, which is why we continually reinvest some of our resources into developing Richard and his team of volunteers and creating a good working environment for them, i.e. infrastructure. Rest assured, nobody's getting rich here. So here comes the ask. It's taken us around a decade to build a sound organisation with good governance that's widely respected in the social capital space. If we can expand our capital base just a little bit further, there's a good chance that we'll attract investment from funds like Kiva, and their baseline loans are around $50,000 US, which will enable us to hit the BHAG and do some really good stuff. In order to do this, we need a little help. Why bother? Well, we've been operating for over a decade now, and we're now a trusted go-to organisation for government-funded projects. We're making a difference at a local level, so you know exactly where your money is going. We have a first-class man on the ground in Richard, who has more energy than the rest of us put together. We're doing stuff that matters. Is there anything more important than giving people the chance to improve their lives through hard work and innovation? And finally, we're on the verge of taking this puppy to the next level, and that's an exciting thing to be involved with. So here's all the Capital for Life information that you may need. We're a registered charity, our number's there. We also have a Ugandan registration and our trading address and Richard's address, email address and our telephone number there. And if you feel that you can help, no matter how small the amount, then please contact us on one of the email address. So that's mine there, timwebster54@gmail.com or chris.tynan@extra.co.nz. Thanks very much for your help. We appreciate it.